African Queen channel viewers, subscribers, family, how are you doing? Oh my god, it is so nice to see you again. So nice to be here. It's actually nighttime and it's very late at night. I decided I'm going to be vlogging. It doesn't matter what time of the day it is or what time of the night it is. I am going to be vlogging. And I'm hoping, that you guys are going to be, continuing to support this channel and help me grow. Thank you so much, all the new subscribers. I see you there. You're coming on board one by one. I'm happy to grow organically because, there are many ways to grow a channel. You can grow a channel by actually growing organically and people subscribe to your channel. Some people, they subscribe really fast into channels, and other channels, they struggle to grow. And I think I'm in the second category where I'm struggling to grow. Then there's another way to grow the channel, which is to actually purchase subscribers and views. And that happens a lot more than you imagine. Not that I would, fault anybody for wanting to do something like that. But it's only that for me, the reason I decided I will not be following that specific trajectory is because I want to know that everybody who's on my channel is a real human being. And that way I will know exactly what it is that interests you on my channel. So that when I talk about a specific topic, I can see kind of like, what people's reactions are, if there are any. And sometimes I get reactions on Facebook, and sometimes I get reactions even in person in my WhatsApp. And once in a while I get one or two comments on my videos. But I want to encourage you guys to comment on my videos because we need to engage. You need to help me to grow, but also to grow in my mind and in my knowledge and in my thoughts and to expand, because this is a conversation. Yeah, conversation is a two-way street. I can't be just conversing to myself, can I? Anyway, so today we're going to be talking about something that is so sad, unfortunately, and it's about loss. I'm in this week of mourning, remembering my friend Faith, who passed away, and I mentioned her before. This has been a hard week for me, actually starting from Sunday, because she actually died Sunday last year. So it's been exactly 1 year. She really was like a sister to me. She was a sister to me, actually. The definition of sister can extend beyond biological sisters to friends. Some friends, they stick closer than a brother and a sister. Faith was one of those ones who stuck close to me. I really miss her. I love her. But at some point, you guys will have to just bear with me as I just manage the loss. It will take time. Yeah, I don't expect it to ever go away. Every single person on this planet has experienced loss. Some of you have lost loved ones, very close loved ones, family members, maybe your parents, a sibling, a child, a sister, brother, friend, somebody who's so close to you, and that person's loss, even affected you and impacted your life completely. Last year, 2022, was a very hard year because actually we lost a lot of people. And recently it continues on. Since the pandemic, I can say, there's been a lot of loss, and a lot of people have really been, suffering. And the world has kind of changed. There's a lot of sadness in the world. And even if you see me laughing and happy and smiling, it's not because I haven't been affected by loss, but it's my way of managing my life. And I believe everybody has their own way. You have your own way of how you manage. So anyway, recently we had several losses, and let me just mention one or two that you recall. The first one that comes to mind is one of the more recent ones. Let me talk about internationally now and then we come local. Internationally, we lost Lisa Marie Presley, who is Elvis Presley's daughter. For those of you who are not old enough to know who Elvis Presley was, he was a musician who was very popular back in the 60s and 70s when our parents were younger. I'm in my 50s, and so my parents, I remember my mom dragging us to all of Elvis Presley's movies. And in those days, anybody remember the drive-in cinema? In Kenya, we used to have this thing called the drive-in cinema, where you go and you park your car in the evening. Everything will start at home, and we're going to the drive-in. Usually it's a Friday night. Yeah, they're coming from work. Those were the good old days, seriously. You guys who do not know Nairobi, those days, man, we had a good time. So Friday night, usually it was a Friday night, we come from school, we're so tired, we're exhausted, so we're told to take a nap, because guess what, we're going to the drive-in, yay! We were so excited, usually Friday or Saturday night. So the drive-in cinema literally was an outdoor cinema where they had bumps, and beside every bump there was a speaker, and that speaker would be put into the window of the car, and then the big screen would be out there. And so my mom would start by, ordering or, getting things cooked for us, things like pancakes and sausages and crazy things like that. I really came from a very interesting background family, very different from probably what many people experience. But let me tell you my side also, yeah, so that you're also aware. So mom would actually prepare pancakes and sausages, and then dad would drive in to town, and then he'd pick up chicken and chips and things like that. Because when we go to the drive-in cinema, usually the restaurant was not very good, but we'd get drinks from there. So we go in and you pay. It's like a toll booth, just like the way you're driving into on a. I'm trying to see what it would be equivalent to, like if you're on a highway and then there's a toll booth. Yeah, so there was a toll booth just by the drive-in cinema. They would pay their money for the movie, and then you remain in your car, and everybody's parked their car. I'd see my dad trying to, negotiate, and he would be like, "Can you people see the screen? Can you see the screen?" We say, "No, Dad, roll back a little bit." He'd be rolling over the bump. Roll back a little bit so the car would be sitting like this so that we can all see. So we went to so many drive-in cinema. There was one in Kenya on Thika Highway, and there was another one called the Boulevard, which was actually in South Sea, and it's still there even now, by the way. I don't know whether it's still functioning. But drive-in cinema was a big thing in my day, a very, very big thing, and something that was so exciting. Those of you who remember the drive-in cinema, say a word or two about it if you ever attended any drive-in cinemas. So those outdoor cinemas, that's where, we used to go and watch Elvis Presley shows and many other types of shows. And I remember my mom was a fan of Elvis Presley. Wow, wow, wow. Any movie that came out with Elvis Presley, we had to go and watch. I used to ask myself, my mom is really into this guy. Yeah, but his music was very interesting, and we were exposed to him and all that. So we grew to love him. We all grew to love him. And unfortunately, Elvis Presley died. He was actually abusing drugs, unfortunately. He passed away. His wife also passed away. So Lisa Marie was left on her own, and she's an only child. She married, I think, about 3 times. And within those marriages, she had approximately 4 kids. I think she had 3 daughters and 1 son. And Lisa Marie, who is the daughter of Elvis Presley, just recently passed away. It was really sad, when she passed away, because actually the story goes that she had lost, in 2020, which is about 2 years ago, or almost 3 years ago, she lost her son, her only son. She had 3 daughters and 1 son, and she lost him to suicide. This boy was quite young, and I think he was maybe young in his early 20s or something, or maybe late teens, early 20s. But basically, she was so close to her son. You know how mothers and sons have very close relationships. She was extremely close to her son. And she says that in researching this situation, in researching her story, finding out about what happened, basically she addressed the National Grief Awareness Day, which was, I think, either in January or December. But there was a National Grief Awareness Day in America. And she talked about the fact that grief is something that is an unpopular subject. It's not popular. It is not something that people are comfortable talking about. Basically because grief is not like a really what you call a sexy subject or a topic that many people are comfortable talking about. She wrote a very emotional essay about it to help people to deal with grief. She talks about the fact that grief is a very lonely place, that the death of her son literally destroyed the whole family fabric. She felt guilty, and she asked herself many times what she could have done differently. Unfortunately, she said that within about a month, many of the people who were very close to her had already dissipated. People had already left and gone their own way. So she felt very guilty with it, and yet kind of like in the back, she felt blamed. People were busy gossiping behind her back. You'll find that you're grieving the loss of your child or the loss of somebody, and especially if it's a tragic way, if the person died in a way that was unusual. So for example, it was tragic, it was untimely, it was unusual, something like a suicide, something like a homicide, something like maybe an accident, like a drowning or a fire or things like that. Usually the person who is left behind, the carers, are usually blamed to some extent. Where you find people will say, hey, Me, that would never happen to me. I would have known better. Why would I send my child there? Why would I do this? So, for example, recently we've been hearing about, for example, parents who allow their children to travel to other countries. Like, let's say, the eastern countries like Malaysia. I just recently lost a relative. And there'll be probably people in the background saying, why would they send their child to Malaysia? Why would they? So, it's as if we are completely in control. But unfortunately, when it's a premature death, a tragic death, a natural death, like things like that, people are judged and blamed. So she talked about that. She talked about how, especially if you're the parent of a child, how you feel. And she said that she was never the same again. And she said, that she beat herself up tirelessly over this thing, asking herself, what could she have done differently, blaming herself. Yeah. So she said people will blame you. And that is just the tragedy, of loss. That sometimes, you lose a child, and in the meantime, as you're trying to grieve that person, you're also grieving the loss of your reputation. You're also grieving the fact that people are blaming you, that you're feeling attacked, you're not feeling like people are with you. And you can always tell when you're grieving who is truly with you and who is not, Yeah. So basically what she was saying is that, that the way that, the way that you can deal with it, the way that you deal with grief, is that you have to choose to keep going. It's a choice to keep on going. And she said that choice becomes more and more difficult, actually, every single day. She has to tell herself every single day that she has to keep on going despite the loss. So for you guys who have experienced loss, my dear subscribers and viewers, if you have experienced loss in your life and you've lost a loved one, I know there are times that you probably feel like you also want to give up. You don't want to live in this world anymore without your loved one. But you see, the thing is that, it's a choice, it's a choice that you have to decide for yourself every single day. I'm going to live and I'm going to live. I myself lost a baby. I've mentioned this before in the past, and that was the hardest, very most painful thing. And I also beat myself up and wondered, why did I even have this child in this country? Why didn't I get up? I had a bit of savings. Why didn't I get up and have her in India, have her in South Africa? I knew I was a high-risk mother because of my age. Why didn't I think? Why didn't I do? But if I woulda, coulda, shoulda, if love could bring your loved one back, believe me, they would be here. They would be here. Yeah. So Lisa Marie basically, passed away just recently, and she had attended an event where they were honoring her father just before she passed away. And she asked somebody for help, to stand up. She was looking so pale, so thin. Nobody even questioned, what's the problem with this lady? She asked somebody for support. She says, I'm going to have your hand. Somebody only in her 50s who was struggling to stand up. I wondered to myself, if she was in Africa, don't you think, somebody would have picked up on that she was not well? So unfortunately, Lisa Marie died, and something tells us that perhaps, people are saying that perhaps she probably died from a broken heart. And broken heart syndrome apparently exists, by the way, you guys. Yeah, broken heart syndrome exists, because if you look in the literature, you actually find that it even has symptoms. But I'm going to talk about that after I talk about another person who also passed away. Recently, for those of you who are aware of the Ellen DeGeneres show in the US, there's a gentleman who is a beautiful dancer, and his name is Stephen Twitch Boss. And Stephen Twitch Boss and his wife Allison were dancers, and that's how they met. They met on the stage. They were dancing for Something Come Dancing, one of these shows. And they got married, and he was the dancer and musician on the Ellen DeGeneres TV show. Well, he passed away also by suicide just last year in December. It was a very painful death. Actually, a lot of people were asking questions. People have been asking questions about why did the guy die? He died in such strange circumstances. The man just left his house without his car and went to a nearby motel, which was hardly inhabited by people. And, they hardly had any visitors in it. Yeah, and then he was found dead in the shower cubicle, in a rather gruesome way. Apparently it was like a gunshot. He was found dead in the bathroom, and the story was that he committed suicide immediately. But then the way that the whole situation was handled was unique, because the person who ran to tell the police about this situation was the wife. He went to, by the way, he was away, he left like, let's say this morning. Yeah, let's say he left today. Let's say today is, Monday. So he left today in the morning at, let's say, 11 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the morning, takes off, goes away, spends the whole night out, and the next day at 11 o'clock, the wife runs to the nearby police station, shouting and saying, "Oh my God, livid and worried. Oh my God, my husband, he left." But I mean, he's been away more than 24 hours. I mean, what were you waiting for? Really, what were you waiting for? Me and my husband doesn't come back overnight. Me, by the way, I'm good looking for him the same night. And he was not picking up his phone and stuff like that. So anyway, under mysterious circumstances, he died. And that has left a lot of, questions out there. So his wife Alison, is there, and apparently I hear that she posted a TikTok video with her latest dance partner. Like so soon after that, she did that. She posted a TikTok video. And people are asking themselves, really what really happened to this young man, because he was before that interviewed and talking about having had more children with his wife. He already had children of his own. He was already a stepfather to her daughter, and they looked like they had a very good marriage, a very happy marriage. He's a happy guy, and we're wondering what happened. He's a very young man and he passed away. He's only in his 40s. Yeah, so I think, we were talking about, loss. Yeah, so this is what has been happening, guys. So a lot of people have died and lost their lives. Last year was very hard. I'm not going to go into like every person who died, but most recent death that is now hitting hard, and the reason why I'm bringing up the story today is because one of what we would call in Kenya our mugumo tree, which is like a big I don't know what a mugumo tree, let me see what it would be. Apparently, guys, the mugumo tree is called the strangler fig. I never even knew that, yeah? But basically, they say that the mugumo tree dominates other trees and it grows into a giant that's seemingly immortal. And it's actually true. The tree is actually associated with many of my tribal people's ceremonies, and it's called the mugumo tree. It grows just gigantic. You can see that it's many trees kind of intertwined into one, and it's called mugumo. So when somebody who is significant in society passes away, we say that a mugumo tree has fallen. So we just recently lost, just yesterday, we just lost a very, very dear person in the Kenyan political and academic scene. And he was the previous cabinet secretary for education, and his name was Professor Dr. George Magoha. Now, the thing that is significant about his death is that he was actually in the process of arranging his brother's funeral. His brother also passed away in America. He was also a professor. Yeah, I don't know whether he was a doctor, but these people are very highly educated people. So Professor George Magoha was awaiting his brother's body's arrival. And he was very busy organizing the funeral. And then he too passes away. I mean, that is tragic. Can you imagine? Yeah? 2 PhDs die. 2 PhDs. He was 71. I don't know how old his brother was, yeah? But what is interesting about Professor George Magoha, let me give you a few details that will be interesting to you guys who are probably not Kenyan. Number one, Professor George Magoha is, he was actually a surgeon, and he studied at the University of Lagos and married a Nigerian woman, and they had one son. All of them are doctors. The woman is a gynae obstetrician. She's an obstetrician with the public hospital in Kenya, and she's a Nigerian of origin. She's a beautiful woman, and they have one son who's a medical doctor, who also tried to resuscitate his father, by the way, at home. So Professor George Magoha, is survived now by his doctor wife and his doctor son. Apparently, he only had one child. I didn't know that in Kenya there are some men who only have one child and they're okay with it. Yeah, but anyway, yes, he has one child with her. And he managed to keep his family out of the limelight for a long time. And I only just discovered that he was married to a lady from West Africa. So apparently what happened, the way that Professor George Magoha died, from what I'm listening in the news, is that the wife called his friend, who is also in the medical profession, I believe he's also a surgeon, called his friend and said, "I need you here very, very urgently. Please come." So on his way, she was asking him, do you have a blood pressure machine? And the guy goes, "Yes, I do have one." So he went back, I believe, to pick up the blood pressure machine. And as he was arriving home, she says, "Can you please call an ambulance?" And he's like, "I'm already actually at the home." And apparently George Magoha had said that he wanted to see him, and he wanted to see his son and his grandson and wife. So apparently his son is married also, and they have a grandson. Yeah, he has a grandson with that son. Oh God, anyway, I don't really know all the details. All I know is that Professor George Magoha was significant because he is actually known as our professor by many young children in Kenya, because he is very dear to the young people of Kenya. He's dear to the education sector. He's dear to a lot of parents. A lot of parents really like the CS Magoha. And there were many emojis with Magoha because he has a very, what do you say, expressive face. So there were very many memes on George Magoha during the pandemic period, especially during COVID lockdown. Because every time that he would announce that the schools were opening, the government would come back and say, no, lockdown continues. So he goes back and contradicts himself. And they started making fun of him, Every time they were saying they're opening school, he says, no, we're not opening yet. No, okay, we're opening on this date. Then he has to change and go back. And he became like a circus. And everybody was making fun of him, and that's how I got to know him, because I was in Mombasa at that particular time, and there were so many children staying in the houses, and all of them were waiting for Professor George Magoha to give them their opening date for the terms. And the parents were really looking forward to the kids going back to school. They were exhausted with all these kids being at home under lockdown. And George Magoha would announce the date when the children are going back to school, and just within about the same day, he would announce that they're not going actually on that day. So he just looked like a guy who is yo-yoing and doesn't know what he's doing. But in listening to a lot of him, because he was vetted into this position, this guy is like not a joke. He studied at the University of Lagos. He also studied in the US. He studied in the UK. He had a medical background, and he was also teaching at the teaching hospitals in Nigeria, and came to Kenya where he was earning almost a pittance because he wanted to serve the government and he wanted to serve the University of Nairobi. But he did a lot. And he oversaw the building of the towers. He got a lot of money for the University of Nairobi. And he's a very accomplished person, Somebody who, is very well read, somebody who does research, and somebody who's very straight and narrow. One of the few people who are not corrupt, one of the few people who stands up against corruption, one of the few people who are left, who were, straight up. And also somebody who loved God and who loved the people of Kenya and loved the children of Kenya. It's rare that you hear about such people. It's rare that you hear about academics, because in Kenya we only talk about politicians. We don't actually celebrate our academics. But I think it's time for us to look back and look at all the academics that we have left and see how we can use those academics as much as possible to straighten up our education system, because our education system is very, very critical and very important to us, So I just feel that perhaps, I was wondering to myself, I'm just speculating personally. I'm not saying that I know anything about the reason why he passed away. His friend, who is a surgeon, was asked by reporters whether he had an existing condition. And he said, well, at his age, yes, he did. So who knows, apparently he died of a heart attack. But I asked myself, where did this heart attack come from? And I thought to myself, maybe he died of broken heart syndrome. Because, he was organizing the burial of his brother. And he was quite an emotional person, and somebody who seemed, who had like a soft heart for people. And I was wondering, for you guys to be aware of this thing called broken heart syndrome, let's find out what it's about. It's described as a condition where it mostly affects women. It causes mostly low blood pressure. It usually affects people who are over the age of 50, okay? This is just, Googling under Mayo clinics, yeah? It's also associated with mental health conditions such as anxiety and depression. And also it can cause irregular heartbeat and heart failure and blood clots. And it's usually treated medically with what they call beta blockers. Yeah. So what I wanted to say is that when you see that somebody is actually grieving the loss of a loved one, for example, yeah, you might find that that person actually goes into some sort of illness, that they actually start to express illness themselves. I think it's good to watch the grievers. If people are grieving, you've lost somebody, you yourself, if you have lost someone and you're feeling all these symptoms, you're getting irregular heartbeats that are not going away, you're getting, your blood pressure seems to be low, you have anxiety and depression already, and you've now lost somebody. I think it's important to go to the hospital and get treated, because some people actually collapse and die. Apparently he collapsed a couple of times before he died. So when his friend arrived at the house, by the way, they managed to get him into a car and into the hospital. So he actually died at the hospital. But when I watched, how long it took them to get him to hospital, I wondered to myself, what could they have done differently? Maybe they had called an ambulance, maybe they would have been getting, resuscitation. But he was resuscitated by his own son. So, to be honest, like I said, hindsight, is always 2020 vision. Yeah, so, I mean, I'm going to play you a little bit of a clip of Professor George Magoha so that you get to know who this gentleman was. He summarized his CV and I was like impressed. This guy was not a joke, man. This guy was accomplished, seriously accomplished. He definitely deserved that job that he had. And I remember at some point people were asking, they say, oh, the job went to somebody who was not even qualified. But I disagree with that. I think he was very highly qualified and he actually delivered very well in the previous government. He's no longer with the current government, by the way, but he was with the previous government.
Professor George Albert Omore Magoha was born some 52 years ago in Kisumu East, the current hospital at Kisumu East, and went to primary school in Game and Nairobi. My primary school was at Dr. Livingstone, after which I joined Starehe Boys Center, where I was trained to be what I am today. After Starehe Boys Center, I went to Strathmore College, and from Strathmore College, I was taken then by the government through a scholarship to the University of Lagos, originally University of Zambia, but there were issues there, so I went to University of Lagos, where I trained as a physician and continued from there to train as a surgeon and urologist. From there I also went to the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland, the Royal Postgraduate Medical School in London at Hammersmith, and much later in life to the Stanford University Graduate School of Business. My trajectory from the medical perspective has been extremely eventful because I started teaching in 1979 at the University of Lagos and was then requested to come to Kenya in 1987 when the late Professor Wori died. The government was looking for Kenyans abroad and I was approached and came. At that time, I had to leave a well-earning salary of over 100,000 shillings to come and start earning 6,000 shillings because I thought I had something to offer. On coming to Kenya, I took a job which was basically below what I was expected to do. I started on as a lecturer, but within a year I went on to be a senior lecturer and passed very quickly through the ranks from 1988 to the year 2000 when I became a full professor of urological surgery. So the vertical trajectory in 1999, I was tried as a chairman of academic department of surgery as an acting chairman, then later confirmed. And since I'm very firm, even though I was approached to be a dean, I said I was not going to be a dean because I was not going to campaign to anybody. But the staff told me, no, that's precisely why we want you to become the dean.
The thing I like about him is that he was, if you watch some of the clips and you see what he's talking about, he's trying to streamline the universities so that the universities do not duplicate their efforts. They don't offer the same courses within just a small radius, that the universities have a more sustainable way of seeking funding apart from just relying on students' contributions or students' fees, that they should be doing research, they should be coming together with other universities globally and competing for funds. He actually admonished a lot of university vice chancellors for not attending meetings, not giving themselves fully to their teaching professions and splitting themselves up with other universities. He said that in the 10 years that he was in the government, he talked about an astronomical increase in the number of universities. People are asking for university charters, People want to establish universities, but the problem is that all the universities are offering the same courses and all of them are coming back to the government to ask for funding. So he says, no, each university should distinguish itself and offer and become good at specific subjects. So if you are an agricultural university, stick to agriculture. Don't also offer law and medicine and other things. Stick to agriculture. If you want to be in health, stick to health. If you're engineering, stick to engineering. And that will make it easier for you to attract funding and easier for the government to fund you. And also to retain students, because he said, the cake is the same. They're all targeting the same students. And now the quality of education for students is so low right now at the universities that employers have written to the universities complaining about the quality of graduates, the fact that people are coming in with a lot of diplomas, certificates, signed by the vice chancellors of these universities, but when they are questioned, they don't even know how to answer any questions during interviews. They don't even know what they're talking about. That means there are some sort of irregularities going on with issuance of diplomas and certificates at university colleges in Kenya, which is very unfortunate and not surprising at all, by the way. Yeah. So basically, apparently, he's married to this lady called Dr. Barbara, and his son is called Dr. Michael. All of them Magoha. Yeah, it's just really sad that we lost this gentleman. And you guys, those of you who are close to the Magoha family, it would be good to give them your, condolences and pass their condolences to them. I myself pass my condolences to the Magoha family, and I want to tell them, if any of them are watching, that your father was amazing, your husband, your father, or your relative was an amazing man. Your professor was wonderful. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of young people, children, who are going to be affected by Dr. Magoha's death, Dr. Professor Magoha's death. And so everybody should be watching out for the kids, because the kids actually became very close to this gentleman. He was their role model. And therefore, you guys, let's not minimize the passing on of this man, because he was an icon in Kenya and also an amazing academic. So anyway, yeah. That is just, my eulogy for Dr. Magoha. Like I said to you guys, there's so many things that are happening, and they're happening all at the same time. So as much as I'm showing you my personal life, I also want sometimes to talk about politics and things that are happening in the society, so that we are relevant, isn't it, guys? Yeah? For those of you who are not Kenyans and maybe from other countries, those of you who are my subscribers or, my viewers, and you're not from Kenya, well, I hope that this is still relevant to you. You need to know that, we had this amazing icon of a man, and I'm sure you have the same people in your institutions. Let's look out for, our academics as well. These people are people who are offering services to our young people and helping to prepare them for the workforce, for the workplace. And therefore, professors and teachers are very underrated and very underappreciated in our societies, and yet they are so important. I come from a family of teachers. My grandparents on both sides were teachers. My parents were teachers. Yeah, my father is is in STEM science. My mom is actually a teacher. So I'm a product of a teacher. I also graduated in education. So for me, teaching and mentorship and instruction is absolutely critical and important. Yeah. So anyways, as a parting shot, I would want us to remember Dr. Magoha's call to the universities to downsize, right size. Dr. Magoha actually criticized the current formula at the universities, which is 30-70. 30% of the staff in the universities in Kenya are actually academic staff. 70% of the staff in the universities are non-academic. And he said that this is completely unsustainable. And I agree with that. Why is it that we have universities that have only 30% academic staff? That doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah. He also decried the problem with tribalism in universities. And he said the problem with tribalism is that it limits the kind of capacity and mental capacity of institutions. Okay? Because basically you're employing relatives. So the information and the knowledge is only coming from one source and from one type of way of thinking. And what that does is that it limits the quality of education that is offered by these institutions. So tribalism, is something that he also talked about. He talked about the fact that there are some subjects that are kind of being ignored, which are very important, such as soil science. He actually mentioned and said that soil science is a subject that should be taught by universities that are focusing perhaps on agriculture, because a lot of farmers are destroying their soils by use of fertilizers. Yeah? So you see, this gentleman really makes a lot of sense. I'll try to see if I can play that part of the clip for you where he talked about that.
Good morning. God is good, and all the time. You will allow me to speak from the hip the way I always do, and I can't pretend that I'm happy this morning. How many people are representing VCs here this morning? Please just be upstanding. I already know you because I saw you. It is even worse when you don't want to say the truth. By my assessment, most of them are cowards. By my assessment, we have less than 20 VCs in this gathering, out of 78, and it is a shame because we are here discussing very serious, please be seated, very serious policy issues. I want to start by recognizing the World Bank team, my colleague, Professor Colette Suda, you as my colleagues, our collaborators, ladies and gentlemen. I think I want to be very, very candid that we are actually on the brink, and that from where I sit, like I said, Professor Colette Suda has alluded to some of this. In 2009, when I was a Vice Chancellor at the University of Nairobi, we had 18 full-fledged universities. In 10 years, we have 49, plus another 25 awaiting charter, making the number of 74. And the reason why I'm saying we should be very, very candid, we are the academic faculty. It is not the politicians, it is not any other person out there. And I want us to discuss this without prejudice. In fact, if we are in the box, let's get out of the box and destroy that box completely and ask ourselves, do you think this very quantitative, rapid expansion has been accompanied by due diligence in terms of getting the requisite faculty? So that issue of numbers, you must apply the brakes. You must apply the brakes, because if you don't apply the brakes, somebody else is going to apply the brakes for you. And I keep asking, that even though I'm just an ordinary surgeon, somebody should tell me why we should have 6 universities in an area of 30 or 40 square kilometers teaching exactly the same thing. It is stupid in capital letters because it means you have to provide 4 different faculty instead of synergizing by allowing the faculty to come together. Are we together? And you right size by getting the staff that is not required out of your system. But what I can tell you is that there is no money coming from government to support you. Education is already consuming close to 33%, and I can assure you it is not going to cost 50%. So stop dreaming and thinking that somehow government will provide additional money that you are looking for. It is not forthcoming. The answer is with you. The answer is with you. Within your own university systems, what is it that you have done there that you think you can correct before we come and correct it for you? I am a STEM faculty. It does not mean at any time that we don't respect and recognize all the other faculty. Are we together? The rest of my extended family are in the other faculties, but I see them driving cars. I see them driving motorcycles. I see them buying gas cylinders. So when the government says we should increase enrollment in STEM, it is not because STEM is more superior than the others, but perhaps because you need it. Everybody needs it. And then, having said so, you ask yourself, why? If you are looking for a university specialized in agriculture in Kenya, which one will you talk about? There is none, because everybody is doing everything. That is another stupid thing we as academics, including myself, should be blamed for. And it is time we stop and think. Because the government of the Republic of Kenya is ready and willing to fund universities that are relevant in terms of what the niche is. if one wanted to do engineering in Kenya, which are the universities that he will go for? Then why should that degree that has a niche in engineering be doing other things? This is a conversation that you must have, whether you like it or not. It is not me. Research and academia do not follow tribal lines. Are we together? We can't wait for the politician or an expert or a consultant to come and solve this for us. It is us who should be able to solve it. Which means if we have policies within your own that hire people who are competent, they do not necessarily have to come from your tribe. Kenyan employers, ladies and gentlemen, have expressed serious concern with current graduates' abilities to competently respond to demands of jobs. In my other life, immediately before coming here, I was involved in recruiting technical staff. And I want to say once again that I was shocked at the volumes of certificates that the applicants had. You are looking for a PhD person with competencies for a certain task, and you start interviewing, and the guy doesn't know what you are talking about. And that PhD has been given by one of you here. It's not a laughing matter, it is very serious. So holding a paper written PhD means nothing. Do something about it. It's not enough to say, oh, this year we are also going there. This year we produced 100 PhD. Maybe in that 100 PhD, maybe only 10 can stand the task. And what is happening is somebody else writing the thing for them. Then you step down in the interview and you try to see if you can get a master's level there. And that is also lacking. Go and try it yourself. Go and try it. And when you look at the certificates, they come from you. Or is it that you have lost control? Or something is seriously wrong with our system? So we must actually right size. We have to right size. I've emphasized that the need for universities to start playing on their strengths and to avoid duplication. This one, we are going to act on.
He said universities should actually conduct a skills inventory, okay, to know what skills are needed by industry. And he said that he was lucky that he was teaching at a time when universities were actually linked with industry, okay. And unfortunately now all there is PhDs. So many PhDs who don't even know what they're talking about. Yeah, incompetent PhDs. Many of them, he said that out of maybe 100 PhD graduates, only 10 of them are actually truly proper graduates. The rest of them have probably got their degrees, have actually used irregular methods to get their degrees, or maybe they have been passed and they didn't actually deserve it or they didn't qualify for it. And it is bringing a very negative view back to the university. Okay, so he talked about sustainable funding, he talked about right sizing, he actually gave credit to some of the universities that have managed to do this. He highlighted some of the universities such as Barton University, which he said has managed to right size and now are doing better. And financially they're able to balance their books. He also gave examples like Rwanda, the country of Rwanda that has managed to right size its universities, the country of South Africa that managed to merge universities together. And that way, by right-sizing their universities and merging universities together, South Africa now is one of the leading countries that provides the best tertiary education. South Africa is now the country that is leading in tertiary education because they managed to merge their various universities together to strengthen, their capacity to enhance their ability to specialize in certain areas and certain fields. And that way, the government can also find it easier to fund these universities based on their strengths and based on their niches. He called on universities to identify their niche area. Yeah, he also talked about the fact that, he understands that people need to protect their spaces, but they need to also at the same time right size, yeah. He also talked about strengthening the TVET, that is the Technical Vocational Education and Training, and setting up an open university of Kenya. And he questioned, why is it that Tanzania has had an open university forever, but Kenya doesn't have any open university? What's happening, guys? What's happening at the universities? Why don't we have an open university for Kenya? He asked the question, and I also repeat the question. Why don't we have an open university for Kenya? Because that plan has been in the making for a long time. We are waiting to see the university for Kenya open university. And then he also talked about the mobilization of funding for studies through research, that people need to, like I said before, that the funding model just doesn't work currently, you know. Yeah, and then what else did he also talk about? He talked about, yes, he also talked about the fact that the World Bank was collaborating with the previous government. Although before they were not really showing any interest in education, they collaborated very well with the previous government, his government, when he was working in the government, the previous government. The World Bank and other lending institutions were collaborating. But now what I see with the current government is that actually the Ruto administration mentioned that they were going to be reducing the funding to higher education. Already higher education is receiving about 33% of the government budget at that time. Now it's actually been reduced to something like 15%. So I think universities need to think more out of the box and think about other ways that they can make money. They can make money through research, through collaboration with other institutions. They can make money by being creative, inventing new ways, providing services to the communities where they are. You know, the students themselves can provide the services to the communities, offer like information and iTech in the area of technology. There's a lot to be offered by universities in the area of research, in the area of business. There's so much that universities can do. When I was in university in the US, I remember that universities did not actually rely only on student fees. They were relying mostly on research grants. So I don't see why African universities should not also be doing more research. There's a lot of research to be done in Africa, and you know, the field is open. Yeah. So rest in peace, Dr. George Magoha. And for those of you who watch me, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I'm sorry that if this is a little bit long, but yeah, there's just a lot to be said about this man. Like I said, he was a big Mugumo tree, yeah, a big strangler tree. He strangled everybody else, yeah, because he was dominant in the university and he was dominant in government. So we will miss him, and we convey our sincere condolences to the family and also to Kenyans. Yeah, I convey condolences to my fellow Kenyans, and I say, may our dear George Magoha rest in peace, and let us not waste people in Kenya. Let's not waste talent. Let's not waste brains in Kenya, because there are so many people who are very talented, who have given of themselves to serve in the government, and let us highlight those stories as well, okay, and not overshadow them only with negativity. Okay, and on that note, thank you so much. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to subscribe, like, and share. Toodles. Until next time, talk to you soon again. Bye-bye.